Since the housing market in Austin has been in such a strong buyer's market over the last 1.5, almost 2 years now, it has given folks that are wanting to purchase a lot more negotiating power. It has also allowed us as realtors to get incredible deals for our clients, sometimes. Last year, for example, I was able to negotiate $400,000 off the sales price in a ranch purchase for a client of mine. There is so much more opportunity today than there has been in a long time, no doubt. However, I have seen, and I have also heard from several realtor friends, that a lot of home buyers are kind of going rogue. There are a lot of steps necessary to buy a home, and I've seen some buyers skip some of these steps because the market is in their favor. And this is honestly pretty crazy, y'all. I'm about to share some tips and stories on what not to do in this housing market if you are serious about buying a home either for yourself or as an investment. Hey guys, I'm Daphne Quay, your boss lady realtor here in Austin, Texas. And if you're thinking about buying or selling a home, contact me. My contact information is in the description below. You can also set up a direct one-on-one video consultation with me. Also, if you're watching this video from another part of the US or maybe another town in Texas and you are needing to buy or sell a home, contact me. I have realtor partners all over the US that can help. So if you are needing help with a real estate transaction, regardless of where you are in the country, I got you. Okay, so let's jump right in. Let's talk about these things so you know what mistakes to avoid when buying a home. And make sure to watch this video all the way to the end because I have 2 tips in here that I think a lot of people don't really talk about, and they may not even think about it. And I think this can be very useful when buying property. Mistake number 1 is not deep diving into the numbers with your lender before you start your home search. Every time that I connect with a new home buyer, I'm always sure to put them in touch with a local lender before we start our home search. There were a couple instances earlier this year where we were literally under contract and my home buyers wanted to back out because they didn't realize how expensive the mortgage was going to be. And I get it. Higher interest rates are real, and of course, they have a huge effect on our monthly payment. We literally never want to be in a position where we feel like it's a stretch or a financial crunch. And I've been a realtor for almost 12 years now, and I've never had this happen before. I want to say 93% of the time when I have a home buyer that is under contract, they have a very clear picture of what the financial situation is going to look like and what the numbers are going to be on their new home. So, all that to say, if you are about to start shopping and you are getting approved with a lender, make sure you have a solid understanding of what your monthly payment is going to be. I would absolutely hate for you to be under contract on the perfect home only to realize that the mortgage payment feels way too high. 1, you would be losing out on a great home, and 2, that could actually end up costing you money down the line. So make sure you have all your numbers up front, please. Point number 2, overlooking resale potential. I think this is a really important one, and I think this can actually vary from place to place. I work with a lot of people that are relocating to Austin from other parts of the country, and I know that in some other parts of the country, one of the big things that helps with resale value is the school systems. If a home is zoned for a highly rated school system, that's gonna help improve the value of the home long term and make it easier to sell, etc. That is true here in Austin as well, for example, but there are some parts of town that don't have great schools, but are so popular and in such high demand that the resale value in those areas is always gonna be pretty high. That's really specific to Austin. But overlooking the location of the home in a neighborhood, for example, let's say the community backs up to an apartment complex and this particular home is wonderful and it has a huge yard, but you look out the back window and you see apartments. Better believe that's definitely gonna hurt your resale value. And it's thinking about these kinds of things today that's gonna really set you up for success in the future. Even if this house that you're about to buy is something that you're going to live in for 2-3 years and then eventually rent out, you probably will have to offload it at some point, whether it is in 10 years, 20 or 30, because I mean, I doubt those apartments are gonna go anywhere in the next 30 years or so. Mistake number 3 that I see every now and then. Every time I talk to a new client, I like to recommend at least 1 or 2 local lenders that I have a lot of experience working with. The reason it's best to go with a recommended lender is because they have a good track record. I know they're gonna do a really good job sitting down with you and explaining every detail, and they're going to break down the numbers so you know exactly what to expect. I have a client that closed on a home last year, and they bought this beautiful home in this beautiful neighborhood in Austin, and they decided that they wanted to go with a lender that they chose. The lender did an okay job up until about 2 or 3 days before closing, when they realized that they messed up the type of loan that my client needed. And because they messed that up, my client needed to come up with an extra $100,000 for their down payment in order to make this home work for their family. That is insane. I've not had that exact thing happen before. That's honestly kind of an extreme example, but it's something that happened. It's real. And this was a lender that I had never heard of before. More common stuff that I tend to see, especially with like the big national banks, is they will present a loan program up front and they'll promise X, Y, and Z, but there are so many people handling the file a lot of times that sometimes it does get lost in the shuffle. And this has happened, I'd say 50% of the time we work with one of the big banks, is a couple days before closing, we'll be needing the final closing documents, and then we can't get a hold of anybody because nobody knows who has the file. It's honestly not the end of the world, but it's extremely frustrating, especially when you are actually trying to make the deadline of buying a home. It's a very stressful time. You're probably moving, your stuff is probably all packed up, and to have the lender actually be ghosting you is really frustrating. I had it happen to me one time when I was moving about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was just crappy. So if we can do anything to avoid any sort of turbulation at any point with our lender during the home buying process, let's plan for success and go with the recommended local lender. Also, if you don't like any local lenders that we might recommend, I do always recommend local credit unions. They usually do a really, really good job. They offer great rates. The only thing is they're a little bit harder to get a hold of because they generally just work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, as opposed to like a private lender that is working on weekends and evenings as well. Point number 4, putting hard deadlines on the seller. Now, this particular point can vary a little bit, and I'm gonna give you some examples and some ideas. Some sellers really don't like it when you give them a very specific deadline to respond to your offer. Some sellers really don't like this, especially if the house is new on the market. If the selling party knows they have a great house for sale, they'll likely have a plan to gather offers on a certain date. On the other side of this, sellers that have had their home on the market for a while will be totally turned off if your offer is low and then you put a hard deadline on top of it. It is entirely reasonable though to say, okay, here's our offer, and if we don't hear back from them within the next day or so, we can reach back out to the selling party and say, all right, our offer is now valid until X. You can make that a few hours or a day or so after that point. There are always exceptions, of course, but in my experience, putting a hard deadline on the seller usually backfires. I do have an example of where this has worked, but it's not so much as a negotiating tactic as it is more out of need. Like I mentioned, I have a lot of clients that relocate to Austin from out of town. There's been several occasions where I'm working with a buyer and they are choosing between house A and B, and they prefer house A, so I'll reach out to the selling agent and be like, hey, we just turned in an offer, but we have to know really quickly because my client's relocating for work and they've got to know where they're going to land. Also, if you're not going to accept our offer, we need to move forward with house B. And since that is the truth and it is a genuine request for help and collaboration, that usually works. The selling party understands we have a deadline, they want to make a deal, and so do we. Are you finding this information helpful? Make sure to comment and like this video so that I know to continue making videos like this one. Also, remember, I am a local realtor in Austin, and if you're thinking about buying or selling a home in Austin, I got you. You can always reach out. My contact information is in the description below. Okay, so here we are. We are at the end of the video, and I have got these coveted 2 points for you that I told you I was going to tell you about at the very beginning of our video. Point number 5, assuming you can offer whatever you want. Even though there are a lot of houses that have been on the market for a long time, regardless of the situation, when I'm representing a buyer that wants to make an offer on a home, whether it has been on the market for 2 days or if the home has been on the market for 6 months, we always do a CMA. It's called a comparable market analysis, where we look at homes that have sold in the neighborhood within the last 180 days to pinpoint exactly what price and what terms we want to offer. Now, every now and then I get a client that's like, we want to offer $150,000 less than what they're asking. And if there's a way to do it that makes sense, that's not going to completely turn off the seller, then we will absolutely do it. I will say also, ultimately, the buyer has the final word on what we're going to offer and what terms they want to present to the seller. I can, of course, give them all the information and try to educate them the best I can on what the neighborhood numbers look like, but it is their decision at the end of the day. However, like I said, my job is to help educate them and then also give advice on what type of offer to present that has a realistic chance of getting accepted. Point number 6, every now and then I'll have a conversation with folks, not just home buyers, like people out and about, or if I'm at dinner or at a party or something. And I guess there seems to be this idea that sellers are going to cover all of the buyer expenses in this market. And sometimes this can happen. I've had several instances where we do. And sometimes that's just not the case. There are so many little details and again, nuances that go into a home purchase. We have to look at our offer price. We have to look at our other terms. We have to see what condition the home is. And then oftentimes we have to see what the seller's threshold is. A real life example of this, for instance, let's say you're getting $40,000 off the sales price and the seller's covering your closing costs, which is awesome. And then you do your inspection and you have a bunch of nitpicky items that need to be addressed, and then you ask for another credit also from the seller. In my experience, and this is the case, I'd say like 90% of the time, the seller's sort of worn down with having to pay different expenses and providing different credits. So that doesn't always pan out in a graceful manner. So again, it's my job to help educate the home buyer so that we can walk through this journey of home buying as stress-free and productively as possible. Have any of y'all bought a home and felt like you made mistakes along the way? I think there's a lot of other like little mistakes that people can make, like opening a new line of credit or buying a car while you're under contract, but those are the things that everybody talks about. So I wanted to go over more specific things that maybe we don't know until we're actually in the process of buying a home. So I think these tips can really be applied not just to the Austin housing market, but really when you're buying a home anywhere in the country. Which brings me to my next point. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, if any of you are watching this video from another state, please leave a comment and let me know where you're watching this from. Also, if you're thinking about buying or selling a home in another part of the US, or maybe another part of Texas, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, El Paso, wherever, I have realtor partners all over Texas and all over the US that can still help you. So if you are about to jump into a real estate transaction and want a kick-ass realtor to help you, reach out. I'll hook you up with an awesome realtor. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm Daphne Quay, your boss lady realtor here in Austin, Texas. Till next time, bye.